Today's conversation is going to be inspiring because Dr. NJoy is all about what her name describes, which is
Mhm.
joy itself. So, all about finding joy and what that actually means in your career to calling journey. So, make sure that you tune in, take the time to subscribe, and sit in for a wonderful conversation. Dr. NJoy, how are you doing today?
I'm doing well. Thank you for having me. And thank you for coming on
Um,
my show.
Yeah, I'm excited to have you. You're so fun with all of your colors and your vibrant personality, so that definitely implicates the joy theme for today. First and foremost, I just kind of want to touch on something because I thought that this is inspiring, just because I am also on the entrepreneurial route and I know how hard it is to really be consistent. So I want to
Mhm.
jump into just talking about how I was your 136th episode of your
Mhm.
podcast, right?
Yes.
So talk to me about when you started your podcast, and I want to know more about your discipline and really being
Mm.
consistent in, delivering consistent content to your audience each week. Because I know that a lot of people are interested in
Yes.
getting into this, but they don't know how hard it is
Yeah.
to be
The
consistent.
work.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that question. It's such a fun question. The reason why it's a fun question is because doing the podcasting is fun for me. And I started it back in 2023. It was during July, which is Minority Mental Health Awareness Month. It was right after my last baby. So he was born in January, so he was about 5 months. And I was just like looking to rebrand myself. Well, not even rebrand myself. I was looking to brand myself because up until that point, I had always been associated with whoever I worked for, right? No
Mm,
one I didn't have my own website. Someone asked me, "What's your website?" I'm like, "Go find me on Morehouse School of Medicine. That's the
mm-hmm.
website. You don't have your own website?" No. So at the time I did that, I transitioned out of academics. Then I was just like, "I'm gonna start a podcast. I want to break down the stigma of mental health and mental illness in the Black community. And why not do it during July?" And so I just started it. And if you look at like the cinematography, the lighting, the mic or the lack of mic, the lack of earphones, it's such a big difference from episode 1 to episode 136.
Uh-huh.
And it was just fun for me, or it is fun. I just keep going and every week, thinking of different topics, just based on what people ask me in the
Mm-hmm.
office. And I just make sure I do it every week because I'm just like, I just want to be consistent as if I'm Oprah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because that's the vision part. You
Yeah.
dress the part, right? So my podcast is dressing the part, even though maybe when you look, you're like, oh, she doesn't have that much of a following. But that consistency just has to do with my passion for it, despite how
Mm-hmm.
many people are watching or not.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that that is so important because a lot of people want overnight success, right?
Hmm.
And they're like, "Oh, like I want to start a podcast, but I don't want to
Hmm.
talk to like five people." And it really goes back to your why and your
Hmm.
intention around like what are you creating this for? And
Hmm.
it's really important to really start with the right reasons. Another thing that I want to touch on is you said that you wanted to not rebrand yourself, brand yourself in general, right?
Yeah.
Because a lot of people are the only association they have is with their
Hmm.
employer, right?
Hmm.
And I've even had done work with clients through career transition coaching, and a lot of times employers frown upon you creating a brand outside of them, right? They find it a conflict of
Exactly.
interest. And
Yeah.
what they're really saying, and I also speak on behalf of the employer side, is what they're really saying is they want to make sure that it's not a conflict of
Hmm.
interest. They want to
Yep.
make sure that you're on brand with their messaging.
Yep.
They want to make sure that it's not affecting your time and productivity.
Hmm.
But I always say that if you're following your career to calling path and you are branding yourself and really amplifying your voice outside of your employer, and you're finding that they're giving there's no compromise on their behalf, then
Yeah.
you're out of alignment. So
Yeah.
there's nothing, there shouldn't, if you are in alignment, you should be able to coexist with an employer and also in branding yourself as well. So I'm curious, I know that you
Yeah.
left education before you started your podcast, but could you see this being an issue in the education system?
It was. Oh, you mean the podcast being an issue?
Yeah.
Because I didn't even think about the podcast until after I left. I feel
Mhm.
like it probably wouldn't have been an issue. Maybe I wouldn't talk about certain things,
Yeah.
or maybe I wouldn't have my running videos with just a sports brawl blasted over TikTok and
Yeah.
YouTube, if I'm associated with an academics. I mean, I'm still adjunct professor there anyway, but
Yeah.
I don't have the same restrictions. And I've always been about the community outreach. And an academic institution, they're usually about research, not necessarily doing speaking engagements. So I do
Mhm.
know that more so me wanting to do workshops and community speaking, that wasn't necessarily in the direction that they were in. So
Right.
again, I felt
Yeah.
free when I
Yeah, yeah.
left.
It's always freeing to be able to create, right,
Yeah.
when you're not under that umbrella. But I always
Hmm.
wanna give, kind of like a leeway for people who are still there but do wanna start doing the work to kind of break
Yeah.
free. Before we touch on that experience, before you were able to emerge into your authentic self, I wanna
Hmm.
learn more about what you learned about yourself, in creating these podcasts because we talked about, audience size, but there's more to it in
Mm.
the creation process. So, what did you learn about yourself and really kind of creating podcasts, talking about mental health and really amplifying your voice
Yeah.
in a different way?
Yeah, well, I learned that I'm okay talking about not being okay. And I tell people to get comfortable talking about uncomfortable topics. And as a psychiatrist, you have to be comfortable talking about uncomfortable topics anyway. And
Yeah.
so I've learned that you have to be transparent and just show that you've gone through it yourself. And I'm not perfect. Nobody wants to hear from a perfect person. I've had a lot of obstacles on my path, and I continue to have obstacles in different aspects in my life. And people love to hear that because everybody is having issues. Everybody's under the
Mhm.
umbrella of life be life. And people want to hear about how you get through those obstacles and make it to where you are despite those obstacles. And, that's everything that I push is that, you have joy despite trauma, joy despite the challenges, that resilience, is how you push through. And so I feel like along the way, I'm learning that, yeah, I have these issues, but I can also teach people how to deal with those issues as well. And from the podcast, I thought about writing a book, and I ended up writing a wellness journal. I ended up writing a part memoir as well.
Mhm.
And I actually taught myself some things by writing. I go back and read it. I'm just like, oh,
Yeah.
oh, okay, as if I didn't write it myself. But yeah, it's the authenticity of it and being able to just be myself and not pretend like I'm this whitewash board of nothing trying to tell somebody what to do.
Right. Absolutely. I'm wondering, and I know that, joy can represent so many different things. What are some of the common themes, or better yet, what do you think is the one thing that is interfering with people finding true joy? And what does joy mean for you? I know that's a loaded question, but
Yeah, no, I mean, all I do is talk about joy. So it's
yeah.
it's an easy question, and when you ask that, I think of how joy is resistance. It's resisting all these things that are coming at you. So resisting those challenges, resisting the trauma, the pain, the grief, the loss, and deciding I'm going to have joy despite that. And
Mm,
it's not the same thing as happiness, being happy with a smile on your face and
uh-huh.
life is great. That's not the same thing as joy. Joy is like
Mhm.
I'm going to be peaceful despite this thing that's coming up at me or this thing that's trying to trigger me, and literally denying the invitation to become angry or the invitation to have a
Mhm.
breakdown, because that's what life does when you have these challenges. And so for me is joy is this consistent being or energy that you have despite what's coming at you.
So choosing joy no matter what is coming at you. And I like the reference of denying the invitation of what other emotions are coming up for
Yeah.
you. I'm wondering, and I think that that's a wonderful message, but what do you say to someone that, really emphasizes the need to sometimes be sad or sometimes
Yeah.
be angry and be
Sure.
comfortable in those emotions?
Yeah, I'm glad you asked that because I did mention grief, and I don't want people to think that you shouldn't grieve and you shouldn't have those emotions, because I do believe that and it's different for everybody. But I do
Hmm.
believe there's a period of time, especially after losing someone, where you should have a breakdown and scream and
Hmm.
cry and be numb and not sleep and not show up for work. We're not going to do that for a year, right? I think we all
Right.
can agree, let's not do that for a year. Like I said, the
Yeah.
time frame is different for everyone, but it's a matter of at some point after that lost loved one, on, you do collect the pieces and you do get back to your life and rebrand yourself, whatever the
Mhm.
name is for it, and continue to live with the grief, right? And still
Mm.
have that joy and still be able to smile, still be able to have peace despite that thing happening. And of course, being able to cry when that emotion comes up, but just not sitting in it forever.
What I'm hearing is, you're empowering people to live with both of the emotions, like
Mhm.
allow them to coexist at the same time. So it's not really
Yeah.
in a reference to avoiding them, but allowing yourself to be joyful while you're experiencing all of these other emotions that are
Yeah.
coexisting at the same time, right?
Yeah.
And allowing people to navigate through that and maintain their joy despite whatever is going on, as you referenced
Yeah.
before.
Mhm.
So I think that's an important distinction, and that is really truly powerful. Now, you said joy is different than happiness. What is
Mhm.
happiness? And then how is it different from joy?
Joy, well, happiness is strictly an emotion. Is how you feel. You feel
Okay.
happy.
Okay.
Happiness means you're laughing, you're smiling, you're having a great day. Joy is both an emotion and a choice. And I have actually, I think it's episode 17, way back
Uh-huh.
when, where we
Ooh.
talk about is joy an emotion and a choice. And it was guests with two other psychiatrists, and we all agreed that it's both. Joy, yes, joy does come with that sense of happiness, but like I said, it's not always just only the happiness. It's the choice to defy what's going on, to resist
Mm.
that challenge or stressor that's trying to get you out of your zone, and to be able to move on despite. And that's why my podcast is Journey to Joy Live, because you make the choice to enter that journey towards joy. Maybe that
Mhm.
choice is, okay, I'm finally going to start exercise. I'm finally going to make sure I get the right amount of sleep, eat healthy, go get that therapy that I need, start that medication that, I might need. So it's that choice to go towards that journey towards joy.
Yeah, it's making that choice, and I think that
Mhm.
that goes back to, like, really kind of overcoming that resistance that's preventing you from
Yeah.
experiencing that joy, because even, like, this example of this morning, I just moved, and there's a gym around the corner, and I've been meaning to go sign up for the gym, and this morning, all I wanted to do was edit because I have so much backed up footage, that I need to edit for my business, and so
Uh,
I woke up this morning, and I was like, "I just wanna put on TV and sit in bed and edit all the
mhm.
footage," but I'm like, "I need
Mm,
to get out, and I need to go sign up for this gym." And I
mm,
literally it said to myself, like, I have to make a choice. It's not about the
mhm,
way that I feel right now. It's the
mhm.
fact that I have to choose to go do this despite the way that I feel, and I
I
have to be
feel.
conscious. And so it's almost like, even before you find a sense of joy or you understand what that means for you in your life, it's like
Yeah.
making the choice to kind of move through the actions or move through the
Mhm.
resistance until you find that even plane to
Mhm,
kind of
mhm.
consistently show up that way. And I think that is part of it. It's like moving through the resistance
Yeah.
in order to be able to experience something that you're missing out in your life, which essentially is that joy.
Exactly, and what you just said, moving through that
Yeah.
resistance. If you're lifting a 100-pound weight, that's moving through resistance. If you're moving
Yes.
through, we just watched the Super Bowl last night. They
Yeah.
crashing through these big linebackers. That's
Yeah.
resistance. It's hard work. So I wanna
Yes.
say that none of this is easy, and I said it to my
Yes.
patients a lot. It's supposed to be reassuring. Sometimes they're like, "Oh," when I tell them, "Oh, this is work. Therapy is
Yeah.
work. Exercise is work. Eating healthy is work." Resisting the temptation to be angry is work. So you have
Mhm.
to make that choice to decide, I'm going to put in the work to be able to have that joy.
I love that you said that. And, you know, I think the work is worth it, right? If you look at other areas in your life where you did the work
Yeah.
and it was so extremely challenging and you didn't want to do it, you didn't want to show up, but you pushed through the resistance
Yep.
anyways, and then you got to the other side, you have this amount of gratitude because you're like, I'm so grateful that
Yeah.
I actually did the work to get
Uh-huh.
onto the other side because it is worth it.
Yep.
When we are moving through resistance through things we've never tried before and we're trying to get to a space or a
Yeah.
frequency that we've never experienced. So
Mhm.
to me,
Yeah.
I would say think back to the other times in the other areas of your life where you were able to move through the resistance. That's the same
Yeah.
experience. Do you have any kind of suggestions
Yeah.
that you give your clients or your
I mean,
patients?
throughout all of this, it's growth, but you're right, and that's actually one of my entries in one of my wellness journals. Is like, think back to a time where you were resilient, and what did you
Mhm.
do, and what kinds of things that you use or coping skills that you use in order to get past that challenge, because you've once done it, and even if
Yeah.
you this is a different situation, you've once pushed through something and you have what it takes to push through. And so that's where all the fluffy things like positive affirmations really
Mhm.
count, where you're just like, I can do this. I'm strong. I'm amazing. I'm awesome. I can get through this. And gratitude, because like I say fluffy, because it's just like, oh,
Yeah.
gratitude. What do you mean being grateful? But gratefulness and anxiety cannot sit at the same table. So if you're
Right.
grateful with something, then that's how you get through. Self self love and self grace are definitely very important, and be able to combat that self doubt. That's how you do it, with the self love and self grace, as
Mhm.
you get through these things and make that progress.
Mhm. And I know that when we were talking on your podcast, so we
Hmm.
mentioned like the shift between career to calling. A lot of times it happens where there's this major shift or change in your life. Would you
Yeah.
say when people are there instances where people are experiencing like a major shift or unfortunately like death or
Yeah.
career change or relationship change where they're actually their current situation is so difficult or worse than actually getting up and moving through the resistance so that they have the opportunity to experience something different?
Yeah, yeah, that's what we were saying. Like, it usually takes something big or bottoming out to help you redefine yourself. And a lot of times, that's what we need to get through. It's not like you're looking for a challenge in order to get to that, but it's a
Yeah.
way of accepting that this challenge is a lesson for you to be able to grow stronger. But also, even if you don't go through those challenges, it doesn't mean you need that in order to rebrand or redefine yourself. But
Right.
usually, when you have a catastrophe or trauma or stress, it forces you to kind of sit back and be like, what is going on? Why is this happening? And self reflect. What do I really want out of life?
Mhm.
Because this is not what I want.
Mhm.
And that self reflection is what squeezes out that calling, that passion, that drive to do something different. So,
Mhm.
yeah.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. So, let's kind of take it back a little bit and learn a little bit more about your journey to joy. And
Yes.
I know I was looking on your LinkedIn, kind of looking at your background, and I know that you pursued your bachelor's in psychology, and then you
Hmm.
decided to go to med school to become a
Hmm.
psychiatrist. So, take me
Hmm.
back to the thought process around wanting to pursue psychology and kind of, what did you always know that this is what you wanted to pursue? Did you have that shift? Kind of talk to us
Mm-mm.
through your journey.
Well, it all starts when I was 5 years old and I got hit by a car,
Ooh.
and just going to the doctor and seeing the doctors work on the kids, and ever since that day, I want to be a baby doctor. And,
Oh.
things came natural for me where, all the kids would come to our house to play basketball and things like that, and when they fall and scrape their leg or something, I go in for a Band-Aid. I'm like, "Oh, yeah, I like healing people." And,
Oh.
high school came so easy. I made all A's, and, I that was the first time where I was entered into, I think, a class of psychology. And I was like, ooh, psychology. And, up until then, I always wanted to be a pediatrician. But I'm like,
Mm.
psychology, this is cool. And I saw The Beautiful Mind. I was like, whoa, mental health, mental illness, this is cool. And so I'm like, oh, this is just easy. Yeah, high school's so easy. Then I went to college. I had a 1.9 at one point. My major was actually biopsychology, and I think
Uh-huh.
I had a D in biopsychology. So I switched my major to just psychology because I was like, how you
Uh-huh.
gonna get a D in your major?
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
but I was just going through the motions trying to check off boxes. That's where the ADHD comes in. I talk about how I
Mhm.
have ADHD, just checking off boxes. And
Mm.
I really did hit a bottom, because when you get a 1.9, how you gonna go to medical school? So I
Right.
literally told myself, I'm too stupid for medical school. And I just didn't think I could make it. And fast forward, rewind a little bit, there was a point where a youth pastor, was a pastor at my college, had actually told me, "You are going to medical school. You are going to travel the world. You are going to be the best doctor ever." And so he had told me that. But then, like, maybe some months after that, here I am crying, like, I can never go to medical school. I'm so stupid. I'm too stupid for medical school. And then, this is where the faith comes in because you need that faith, all in that joy too
Mm.
that we've been talking about. I went to the Bible and there was a scripture. I know it was in Timothy somewhere, but it said, "Do not neglect your gift that was given to you through a prophecy." And I was like, oh, there was,
Mhm.
yeah, I already knew about all that since I was 5, but he told me this recently. So it was like that confirmation. And I was just like, okay, I am called for this. This is my calling
Mm,
to be a physician. I don't know how I'm gonna get there, but I know I'm
mhm.
gonna get there. So yeah, I took some time off and just only focused on psychology, not my pre-medical studies. And so to answer your question, I've
Yeah.
always wanted to be a in medical doctor, but at that point I was just like, well, maybe I'll get a PhD in psychology, which is still pretty dope. Like that was
Mhm.
my backup plan. you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
But so I did end up graduating with like a 2.6 uh a GPA, but I went back to post-bac, take some post-bac classes and rocked out 3.8 average with those 3 semesters and was able to get to medical school. So yeah, that's my story.
That is so interesting. So, one of the principles that we use in my practice is belief, right?
Yeah.
And so it comes follows right after vision. So it's interesting that you had this
Mm.
narrative around you had this narrative like I am too stupid for medical school, like
Mhm.
this is not what I want to do, right? And then even
Mhm.
taking it back further, you had this change in your life around 5 years old where you decided exactly what you wanted to do. And I
Mhm.
always say like it doesn't matter. Okay, I'm not saying that every time, someone looks back to their childhood and thinks about what they wanted to do, that like that's essentially what you were
Yeah.
meant to do, but I see it come off a lot.
Yeah.
So, like when I did the work, to really kind of evaluate my path and figure out like which path I wanted to go on or why I enjoy the things that I did, it was always focused around some type of teaching. So you
Ah.
went back and so you knew you wanted to be a pediatrician. So you went through college. It was difficult for you. So you told yourself that you weren't going to be a physician. But then a prophet told you, don't hold back your gifts. You're going to travel the world. You're going to be a great physician. And did you still
Mhm.
believe him? At what point did your belief start to shift? Was it when you saw the
The
scripture?
GPA. Yeah. Oh, and the script. Yeah, in the scripture. Because when he said it, it was like, ooh, yeah, it was confirmation because I still knew. I was just still going through the motions, didn't
Yeah.
matter the grade. But when I saw the accumulation of that GPA, and I was just like, what is going on? It was kind of like a wake up call. What are you doing? Like I was just
Yeah.
like just going through the motions, just trying to get there, but not realizing I needed to be successful in these courses in order to be a
Right.
successful doctor and actually get into medical school
Uh-huh.
to be one. But yes, the scripture brought me back because I was losing that courage, that belief and confidence that I was met. And I forgot. I forgot he said that. So
Uh-huh.
when the scripture was just like, "Do not neglect your gifts,"
It
that these
reminded you.
prophets, I was like, "Oh, somebody said that. This is a
Wow.
God here."
Yeah.
Like
Yes. So
God
I'm
exists.
wondering, have you ever thought about, like, the effect of you receiving the confirmation from the scripture to, like, your changed behavior through school?
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
Oh
because now
yeah.
all of a sudden you have this confirmation, so the way that you're showing up differently now. Like, you
Yeah.
have now all of a sudden where you weren't performing, now you have the
Mhm.
ability to perform because I that's what I believe is you had that belief, the belief system changed, and now you felt,
Right.
like, confident and your confidence increased based on that affirmation, and
Right.
I think that changed the
Yeah.
behavior in how you showed up through school and actually gave you the confidence to get into medical school.
Correct, and I knew I needed to slow down because I was going too fast, not focusing, that's why the grades were so low. So I still
Mhm.
took that break from the pre-medical courses, but I knew it was gonna happen. I knew it was gonna circle back eventually, which is when I did and during the post-bac. So it created that confidence and faith that it was gonna happen, but to, like, also slow down and get my mind right and just realize, "Okay, why are you taking all these courses at once?"
Yeah, yeah. Why are you
Yeah.
doing it this way? Like, who
Mhm.
so, like you said before, a PhD in psychology is just fine. Like, that's
Yeah.
amazing, right? So, it's like, almost like, but you stuck to the path of becoming a medical doctor even if it was a little bit more difficult for you. Do you think that
Mhm.
because you knew internally that that was truly what you were meant to do?
Yeah, it was truly what I was meant to do. And also, I spoke with a psychologist because at one point I was studying for the GRE to go to grad school for that. And I spoke to a psychologist. She was like, get the MD. I
Yeah,
don't remember what she said. She probably said something along the lines of that, we can't prescribe and y'all
yeah,
can, and physicians are usually the leaders. She probably said something like that. I
yeah,
am still not knocking PhDs or
right.
psychologists. You guys are very amazing. But, it was probably along those lines, and the
Mhm,
fact that that was always what I wanted to do, so it's just like, in other words, don't neglect that just on thinking I can't do it, just
mhm.
work a little harder. Because I also realized that my GPA wasn't a reflection of my intelligence, it was a reflection of my effort. I literally wasn't putting the effort
Mm.
in.
That's
Yes!
good. Yes.
I just wasn't putting
That's
that
good.
effort in.
Yes, yes. Well, high school was easy for you, so you probably were trying to keep up at the same pace, rather than adjusting to what was required. But
Mhm.
that's awesome. So, okay, so you went to med school. Obviously, you completed med school.
Yes.
Congratulations.
Thank
And so,
you.
talk to us about some of the endeavors that you pursued afterwards.
Yes. So, well, I mean, a lot went down in residency training because after medical school, you go to residency training, you choose
Mhm.
whether to be a pediatrician, surgeon, OB-GYN, or psychiatrist. At that point, I was still wanting to do pediatrics and psychiatry. But as you know, I'm just a psychiatrist. I ended up placing or getting matched, as we call it, into
Mhm.
a residency program where if I had completed it, I would be a psychiatrist, a child psychiatrist, and a pediatrician because why
Oh,
not do triple board?
right, right, right.
But a lot happened in that residency where I realized, "What is going on? No, that is too much work." I
Yeah.
completely got burnt out, and I realized I really although I love the physical stuff of kids, I really cared for the mental well-being of kids and adults
Mhm.
more so than, like, whether they have a UTI or a pneumonia,
Mm.
and so I
Gotcha.
ended up switching out of that, and that was a big decision to switch out of that
Mhm.
because, it I had gotten my number 1 spot. There was only 19 spots in the nation. So that's another thing where people, like, feel like they worked so hard to get somewhere,
Yes.
so I
Yes.
can't give up. I can't
Yeah.
switch out. But I was just like, "But this isn't what I want anymore. I don't care."
Right.
So
Mhm.
I switched
Mhm.
out. Greatest decision. Usually those really tough decisions that I've had to make have been the best ones, and I've not regretted it. So I ended up just taking the path to psychiatry. I'm still double boarded. I
Mhm.
still am an adult psychiatrist, double and child psychiatrist. So it's
Uh-huh.
like,
Yeah.
so after that, I went on to work for Morehouse School of Medicine. So that was my first job, and they
Mhm.
placed me at Chris 180, which is a community mental health center. And I just been working at that point with Chris 180, and then that was 4 years with them. And then in 2023 is when I left Morehouse School of Medicine and still work for Chris 180, but now Chris
Mhm.
180 is the one who pays me and not Morehouse School of Medicine. So I work
Nice.
there as a chief medical officer, as a psychiatrist, but now I also have a podcast. I'm also an author now, and I also have a private practice. So it's just all these things that have been advanced since 2023. Because I did reach a career plateau when I was at Morehouse. I
Mhm.
was just like,
Mhm.
okay, I'm here.
You're here.
Like I
You're
had
here.
no more ambition. It was just like I was there. I reached that place in life.
I
But
love that. I
yeah.
wanna I wanna talk about that
Mhm.
point. So a couple of things. So the first thing is that decision where you decided that you were gonna let go of being a pediatrician. So that
Yeah.
is really huge, right? Because a lot of times you
Big.
had you had that clear vision and you know exactly specifically what type of physician you wanted to be.
Yeah.
And so you did the work and you actually and like you said before, you were checking the boxes because of your
Yeah.
ADHD. And a
Mhm.
lot of high performing professionals, and I'm sure you could speak to other classifications under mental health where we're checking boxes, right?
Yeah.
But you made the conscious decision to choose. And a lot of times when we have this vision for ourselves, we don't
Yeah.
realize that we don't give ourselves the freedom to understand that you can stay within the same function without it having to reflect exactly what you pictured visually in your mind. Through the experience,
Exactly.
you get the information in the data that you need in order to make the right decision and right pivots throughout your calling, your
Mhm.
career to calling journey. And it's
Mhm.
very important that you give yourself permission to do that.
Yeah.
And that's a huge decision, right? You would have been what, triple boarded?
Yeah.
And then you would also have accomplished, check the box of actually
Mhm.
accomplishing that vision that you had as a child. So talk through the decision if you kind of remember being able to release being a pediatrician and understanding that
Yeah.
a psychiatrist was enough because you didn't make that decision when it came to to the PhD, but you made that decision when you decided to leave the pediatrician route.
Exactly. I think it's just allowing your ambition to be flexible and realize there's more out there because, yeah, 5, baby doctor. I want to be a baby
Right.
doctor. But that didn't mean that once I was in medical school and trying to figure things out that I had to do that. And in fact, what is a baby doctor? That's a neonatologist, one that works in the NICU. And I had one of my worst experiences in the NICU rotation. I had my first panic attack during that
Mhm.
rotation because I won't even say the detail, but something happened. I made a
Mhm.
mistake and I got yelled at. And so I had a panic attack. And so I was just like, this isn't the life I want to live where like these fragile lives are in my hands like this, where I can make one simple nobody died. I'll put that
Mhm.
out there.
Okay.
But they could have died. It's not funny, but it's just like, I don't want that
Yeah.
specialty where it's y'all yelling at me like this. And over in the
Mhm.
psychiatry, everybody's fluffy and happy and
Yeah.
just wanting to make everyone's well-being great.
Yeah.
So just being flexible and realizing I'm still gonna be a doctor. Pediatrics is just not what I wanted anymore. I still have 18 months under my belt, so I still have some of that training, but realizing that psychiatry was just way more fulfilling.
I love that, and you were only able to understand that going through that experience,
Yeah.
because had you not had that experience, you probably would have continued to pursue it. So, that gave you the information you needed to make an informed decision, and I want other people to feel confident in doing so.
Yeah.
You could have this vision for yourself, but it's okay to pivot and operate in a different way and still pursue a fulfilled
Mhm.
calling. All right,
Mhm.
so next you started working for Morehouse, really prestigious college, right? HBCU. And so,
Yeah.
talk about the journey and the excitement and the joy that you had when you first started working there, and then talk about how you got to this plateau.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, I really thoroughly enjoyed working there. And like I mentioned on my plateau, like I just love everybody was black. I
Yeah.
grew up in Michigan. I did medical school in Michigan. Everybody's white. Not everybody, but everybody was white in the medical
Mhm,
field. In Cincinnati, everybody's white. So in
mhm.
Atlanta, it's like, oh, Black Mecca. Okay.
Yeah.
So it's like, all the students, the fellows that now I was an attending, as we call it. And so we were all black. It was just that camaraderie and just being with family is how it felt. And I ended up being the associate program director, which meant I was in charge of all of the studies and teaching future well, no, they were physicians, teaching physicians to become child psychiatrists. I was just like, wow, this is me paying it
Wow.
forward because I once had people to teach me. Now I'm teaching them. So definitely I use the word dream job all the time. But
Mhm.
then I realized, and I'll be a little personal with this. It's not a secret that other people don't know about, but I realized I wasn't getting paid enough.
Mm.
And when Chris 180 needed like a medical director slash chief medical officer role, since I was getting paid under Morehouse School of Medicine just they weren't able to give you that raise. That's the thing about
Mhm.
academic medicine. It's just
Mhm.
it just doesn't pay
Mhm.
as much.
Yeah.
Community health doesn't pay as much either, but it was a little bit more. We're working
Yeah.
exactly under that. But I mentioned that personal detail because for
Mhm.
one, we don't talk about it all the time, and number
Mhm.
two, we chase after a calling and passion, and money does matter. Yeah, you should be fulfilled. But
Mhm.
I was gonna be fulfilled whether I stayed at Morehouse or stayed
Correct.
at Chris. So at this point, it was a matter of choosing. Well, I got 3 kids.
Yes.
I'm the breadwinner. I
Yes.
have to at that point, I still have student loans and
Mhm.
other debt. So you do have to make that choice, and that's when I pivoted from there, also realizing I felt free at the same time. There's no
Mhm.
knock to Morehouse. Morehouse is still amazing. Like I said, I still work there as an adjunct professor, and I do lectures here and there, and everybody's great over there.
No, thank you for sharing that personal detail because we don't talk about it enough, right? It's like, we're doing what we love, but then we're being underpaid. And so luckily
Yep.
for you, you were able to transition into another format that still served you. But a lot of times we transition for an increase in pay and title and all of those things, and it doesn't serve us, right? So
Exactly.
how did you kind of make the distinction that you were going to leave for an increase in pay, but it still was gonna fulfill you just as much as the position at Morehouse?
Yeah, thanks for circling back to that because I do remember the pit in my ear
Uh-huh.
when the person gave me how much I would get paid if I left. And I said, what? Because I was just asking just to ask. I
Yeah.
wasn't really going to leave.
Yeah.
And I was like, I can't leave Morehouse. This is my dream job. I'm going to stay here forever. So I had to
Mhm.
like redefine what that meant because I'm
Mhm.
realizing, well, something else is a dream job. And maybe it is a dream job, but that doesn't mean you don't have other dream jobs out there. This isn't
Right,
like
right.
finding the one where everybody believes whether you have one person that you'll marry or not. That's a whole nother story because a lot of
Yeah.
people don't believe that anyway. But let's
Uh-huh.
let's say the same thing with a career.
Uh-huh.
You can still have multiple careers and multiple chapters in your life. So I made the jump because I realized even though everybody's great over at Morehouse, I knew I would be more appreciated over at
Mm.
the place where I was actually also getting paid more.
Mhm, mhm, and that's part of finding your that's part of joy as well, is feeling appreciated
Mhm.
for the work that you're doing, and sometimes
Mhm.
that comes in all different facets, but also compensation is a extremely important part of that, right? So, yes, thank you for tapping on that. So, you transition into working for the community health center, so then how did
Yeah.
you transition from doing that work? I think you're still doing that work, right?
Yeah, oh, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and then so what prompted you to decide to open up your own practice?
Oh my gosh, that is interesting. And this is another teaching because throughout all this, I've always also worked for an on-call. I've always had some type of, they called it moonlighting in
Mhm.
residency, but I always had some type of other job where I'm on
Mm,
call, where when I'm on call, they call me, I have to see an inpatient consult or an ED consult. So I've always had this underlying extra pay. Like I said,
mhm,
you kind of have to do it if you're working academic medicine. And
right.
so I continued to do that with Chris 180 while I was at Chris 180. And no one teaches you about 1099s and taxes and what you should do because you with a W-2, you usually get the net pay. And you don't have to worry
Mhm,
about the tax stuff. Not at
right.
all. Nobody teaches
Right, right,
about
right.
those
Yeah,
1099. You got to pay all that back, or you should be paying quarterly
taxes.
taxes.
Mhm,
So at a certain point, I realized that, but I was just like, well, so I got 3 kids, or I got 2 kids, and now
mhm,
I got 3 kids. And so I would accumulate debt that way. And so, again, no one says this, but when you have an LLC, you get hired with your job as an entity as opposed to yourself. And when that
mm,
happens, the tax situation is a little bit different. So
mhm,
that's what I'm trying to say is I started out with an LLC, not a private practice. Enjoy
mhm,
Life, Living in Full Empowerment LLC. Then I was
mhm,
like, oh, I have my own business.
mhm.
Maybe I could start seeing patients. It was like this backdoor thing.
Yeah.
And I always wanted a private practice, like eventually, but then I just started like doing each step. Like the next conference I went to, I talked to somebody about electronic medical record. Then I learned about other platforms and other softwares. And then all of a sudden I was seeing my first patient, but I slowly started to do that. I added on one insurance, which I still only just take one insurance. But
Mhm,
it was, like, not really the plan, but it gradually got that way to answer your question. But
mhm,
it started
mhm.
out with a tax situation.
I love that, that's great, thank you for sharing that, that was great insight.
Oh,
It's kind of like,
yeah.
"No, I didn't," it's like, I had this dream to be an entrepreneur." It's like, "No, this helped my tax
No.
situation," and then I realized, like, "Wow, I can start seeing patients independently,
Mhm.
on my own." So that's awesome. Well, congratulations.
Thank you. So now I have 3
Uh,
part-time jobs.
yeah. That's awesome. So I'm noticing a thread or common theme is like you're all constantly doing multiple things, right? And
Yes.
so is there a world where is that kind of like your safe zone? Is there a world where you only focus 100% on one thing? I'm just curious to understand like how you work.
Yeah, so it's a matter of looking at the income, the compensation, and helping us be able to live the lifestyle that we want to live. So right now, the 3 part-time jobs is helping us do that.
Yeah,
But once we
gotcha.
get to a place where we don't need that, I would say that definitely the private practice I would like to grow. But I feel like the on-call job is helping out so much that I don't ever see
Yeah.
myself not doing that.
Yeah. Yeah. No, totally.
And I still love Chris 180. So right now, yeah, it feels like a
All
good
of those
place.
things are kind of checking the boxes, but also fulfilling different parts of your needs at this point in your life. So this is something that fits for you and that you're designing it the way that you see fit, right?
Yeah, and it
Um,
really doesn't feel like work. It feels comfortable, it's flexible. I still have chunks of hours of each day off, other than Wednesday,
mhm.
Thursday. Yeah, Wednesday, Thursday. But the other days of the week, it's like these chunks of days off. So it's nice.
I love that. So we already talked about that, after you left Morehouse, you decided to brand yourself and really kind of create your podcast and talk about mental health, especially within Black women in the community. So talk to me about how the mission around joy came about. Why did you
Yeah.
decide to focus on that choice?
Yeah, Joy is me. It's me. It's my
Mhm,
name. My middle name is Joy. And so when they say, think about a brand, your brand is who you are. And my
mhm,
father, he passed away in 2021, but he always said, "You're my joy. I named you Joy." He takes the credit for calling me joy. And so
Mhm.
I said, well, what we said about redefining yourself after a death,
Mhm.
it was a nice way to tribute to my father as
Mm.
well. Not only that I'm joy, but also that was what he wanted me to be, is joy to the world. And
Mhm.
so I would always call myself Enjoy, and that's why the business is called Enjoy and Enjoy
Mhm.
Life. Life stands
Mhm.
for living in full empowerment. And that's where it comes from.
Mhm. So before and you're a psychiatrist, so you probably already have this level of awareness or understanding, but what transpired in your life that really caused you to focus on what joy actually means so that you can support other people through their journey?
Yeah. You mean like different stressors and traumas and things
Yeah,
like
what w
that?
is there is
Yeah.
was there that major you already said with your father, that really
Yeah.
it's almost kind of like honoring his legacy and really kind of
Yeah.
expanding joy throughout the world. But, what specifically transitioned I'm sure maybe there's several things, but can you
Sure.
talk
Lots of
to
things.
maybe one instance where you really kind of were pushed into the space to really figure out what joy means for you in your life?
Yeah, I guess I can talk about 2020 and 2021. I say 2020 because that was my second miscarriage in 2020. But also in 2016, I had a miscarriage. And that was around the time where I was stressed out in that residency and thinking about leaving the
Mhm,
residency. So you got the stress of burnout and should I be a pediatrician or not? Then there's this miscarriage of a
mhm.
pregnancy that I wasn't even trying to have in the first place. But, when that happens, you decide, yeah, I want this
Yeah,
baby. And
right.
then I had a miscarriage, and it was just like, oh, it was just an awful experience. And then I had another one in 2020, and that's when we really did want a pregnancy.
Mhm,
Under the and we're married at that point, and so I was just, am I gonna ever have a baby? So there's that
mhm.
loss. 2021, my dad had surgery on Father's Day, and then 5 months later, 3 days before Thanksgiving, he dies. But
Sorry about that.
rewind to Mother's Day, my grandma died that Mother's Day. My other grandma died around Labor Day. I keep associating with holidays because that's just how I remember it. So
Yeah,
2
yeah.
grandmas and a father died, plus my first and only, knock on wood, patient completed suicide that same year. So I got all these losses,
Wow.
a loss, and it was during my, maternity leave because, as I said, I always have this on-call job. So although I was still on maternity leave from my W-2, I decided to go back to that job. So here we go.
Mm.
Experiencing somebody with major very severe depression and completed suicide. And so
Oh my god.
professionally had a loss, personally had losses. I'm just like, what is happening? And so times like that, you have to tap into joy. It's either
Yeah.
give up and just not show up and let your life be how it can be when you don't show up,
Mhm.
or decide, you know what? I'm gonna resist against this and have joy, and I'm gonna show other people how to do it and
And how to
inspire
do
joy
it.
in others.
Yeah, well, thank you for sharing that. I'm sorry about all of the lost and I'm grateful that you were able to kind of make the choice to still choose joy and
Mhm.
move through this life experience. Talk to us about some of the tactics that you use to actually practice this. I know you have a journal,
Mm.
but talk to us about some of the activities you did to really kind of reach the space.
Running. You go to my
Mm.
social media platform, it's not a video that you won't see where I'm running. I run. I've been running for about 12 years now. I've done 9 full marathons. I'm about to
Oh,
do my 40.
wow.
Yes, I'm about to do my 49th half marathon because for some reason I wanna do 100 half marathons, and it's my zen, it's my therapy, it's my medication, it's everything. Like, I can't go a few days without running because I know what it could do to my mentality or
Mhm.
my stress level. So throughout all the losses and different stressors I've experienced, I always consistently run or gym and weight train, but
Mhm.
running is definitely always that thing. And spending time with family, traveling. I'm gonna
Mhm.
go
Mhm.
away and use my PTO and go
Right.
on a trip. I've been to over 30 countries. Guess I'm losing count, but we keep
I love
traveling. It's just
that.
great, right? So
Uh-huh.
travel, being a foodie, and running, if I had to name 3.
I love that. And so talk to me about how your journal came about.
Oh, yeah. So the ADHD, because if I wish I realized I had ADHD in undergrad, maybe I wouldn't have been checking those boxes like that.
Mhm.
And in medical school, although I still didn't know I had ADHD, I tapped into the fact that I needed more organization. So I would always create these charts and things like that. So in residency, the stress level made the ADHD come out more. And so I was like, well, maybe
Mhm.
you really have it. So then I realized I had it. I actually took a medication for like a little bit, but
Mhm.
now I just take fish oil to it. Okay. What's all that mean?
Mhm.
I realize it's a struggle to maintain different aspects of my life. Like I could be doing well physically, but then I neglect my social life. I could be doing well with my social life, then I neglect my finances. My finances are my weakest point. And
Mhm.
then I realized that throughout my mental health, physical health, financial health, and social health, there's always this underlying aspirational health, this calling and passion and purpose that is a drive no matter what's happening, as long as I have a drive where I can anticipate something amazing that's about to
Mhm.
happen, I feel
Mhm.
that joy despite things happening. So that's
Mhm.
where the enjoyno comes in at. It helps you balance your mental, physical, financial, aspirational, and social health. And I use the term inspire. I stands for integrity, which is your mental health. N
Mhm.
stands for nurture, which is your physical health. Stability is the S. P is that purpose. The other I is intimacy. And the R and the E is the resilience and empowerment that's needed to be able to balance all these areas. Because especially whatever you have, but especially if you have ADHD, it can be hard to balance all those things.
Yeah, I think that that's great, and I want to talk about ADHD a little bit more because in reference to, high performers, high achievers in their careers, we always talk about checking the boxes, right?
Yeah.
And so when I speak of it, we're just talking about checking the boxes like whatever the social condition is or the social expectation is or, what we're supposed to do at work to check off the boxes, get paid and go home. But
Hmm.
you're talking about something very different, right? Is the ADHD and what that causes you to do or how you show up. So can you dive in deeper as a psychiatrist for today and talk
Hmm.
to us about ADHD and how that affects us in balancing all the different dimensions of wellness in our life?
Yeah, for sure. And with ADHD, obviously it's a lack of attention, lack of focus, being distracted, not completing tasks, disorganization. And the not completing tasks is where that checking box comes in at
Mhm.
because it feels like I'm completing tasks, but I wasn't actually completing them, but it was stimulating to check the box and know that I did it. So, like, for instance, back in
Mm.
college, I would take these beautiful notes, but I would never go back and actually read them. What?
Mm.
Like, you actually have to study, right? So, not being able to complete tasks obviously leads to disaster later on or low
Right.
scores or relationship issues because ADHD taps into relationship issues, more irritability, more impulsivity, arguing, and things like that. So, ADHD can show up in relationships as well as your academics or your work or billing issues or finances. The paying attention to detail, that's an issue with
Mhm.
ADHD. If it's something
Mhm.
stimulating and you like it,
Mhm.
yes, of course. People talk about, "Oh, well, my child don't have no ADHD because they spend 10 hours on a video game," but they like it. Of course they're gonna spend 10
Yeah.
hours on a video game,
Right, right,
right?
right, right.
So, with finances, there's like this just block, this
Mhm.
mental brick wall that I would hit anytime it comes to the finances. But thank God for my husband, he was just like, "We gotta do this." What was it? Mohila, the forgiveness thing basically
Mhm. Mhm.
with the loans, and we finally got those, forgiven last year before a certain person took office, so that was great.
Good for you. Congrats.
'Cause I wasn't caring, I'm like, "Your debt,
Yeah.
whatever." But going back to what ADHD is, it also could mean that there's something else going on in your life that's bringing it out. Because a lot of people are just like, "Oh,
Mm.
I have ADHD," but it could be stress that's leading you to have those symptoms that look like ADHD. It could actually be depression that's lowering your concentration and making you forgetful, or it could be anxiety that's clouding your mind, these excessive worries, this overthinking, and you're not paying attention. You're distracted because you're inside your head and worrying too much. So this
Mhm.
whole fad about ADHD, ADHD, well, maybe it's anxiety. So I treat the mood disorder first. And if we still have some ADHD symptoms, then we know, okay, it's ADHD plus the mood disorder versus if nothing changes and I'm treating whatever we feel is the mood disorder, maybe you really have ADHD.
Yeah, I think that that's the distraction thing is really like kind of like potent here. And
Mm,
I think my question was going to be, is this something that develops over time, or is it relative to what's going on in your life at the time? And you already answered the question. Kind of the stress, the anxiety, and being an entrepreneur itself is very
yeah,
anxiety ridden, stressful. Well, at least for me, and and really being in
yeah.
that unknown space. And so
Mhm.
part of what I have to do to avoid distraction, that's what I say. I never considered myself to be a distractive or a person of lack of focus or unbalanced. But ever since I moved into entrepreneurship, that shift changed
Yeah,
because now you have that future thinking.
it's
You
a
are
lot.
managing a whole bunch of different things, obviously. And so I'm wondering, are there so basically the stress and the organization component of it is, again, I'm getting like I'm overwhelmed. Obviously all of these things are speaking to me, so I'm like trying to organize my thoughts
Which
as well.
one?
I'm like, which one do I want to talk about? Oh, this is what I was going to say. So what I realized is, in order for me to stay focused and free of distraction, I have to have long periods of time being isolated. Is that common?
Mm.
Because I have to be isolated in
Reset.
order to stay focused.
Yeah, we have to
Or
reset.
okay, yes, I have to reset. So,
Yeah.
and so it is that like, is isolation okay? If that, if that, makes
Well, it
is
depends on how long
beneficial
the
to.
isolation is. I mean, if you need a day away and going on, I say going on the beach, but I guess, well, actually, you can, Miss
Y
California. But if you need a day to reset, then that's important. But well, I mean, if you need 3 months, that's okay. It just depends on why. Like, do
Yeah,
you need this isolation because you no longer have
to
interest in
complete a
things and you're not
task.
sleeping? Right. So to complete a
Yeah, so if
task, then
I'm
that's okay.
yeah, okay, got it. And then as far as the completion of tasks, so you mentioned something like you're checking off a box, but you're not actually getting work done. You're taking great notes, but you're actually not executing on it. So, what prevents people from actually like checking the box versus like actually executing on what it is that they need to get done?
Well, in that scenario, it's because the ADHD was affecting it, but maybe it could be mommy brain and distraction because the kids, are affecting you and distracting you from doing that thing that you need to do. And so I actually have a podcast episode on that. Is it mommy brain or is it ADHD? So maybe it's a multitask
Look,
thing. And what I realized with parenting is, yeah, I can multitask, but I need to stop multitasking in certain times because that stresses me out. I might, oh, let me go send this email. And my 5-year-old comes in and I'm immediately stressed because he's distracting me from sending that email. But do I really need to send that email now? How about I not
right,
send it at
right,
6 p.m.? How about I send it the next day during work hours when
right,
he's at
right.
school? So maybe as wife, mom, bosses, as my other book, we not try to multitask just because we can do it.
Right, right. I love it. Are there any, I know we can seek, professional help to get properly diagnosed.
Yeah.
Are there any non-pharmacological suggestions that you have for people who feel like they're suffering from a little bit of ADHD?
Well, so yeah, fish oil.
Fish
Like
oil.
I said, I used to take a medication and I stopped that and I ended up starting fish oil and I feel like I was when I was taking the medication. I can't always work for everybody, but it's definitely evidence-based that fish oil can not only help ADHD, but it can also help depression. So I feel like
Mm.
everybody should just be on fish oil because it just helps you
Yeah.
mentally and the mental fog that you might get anyway from stress. But yeah, that's my tidbit on something that's non-pharmacological. But just taking care of your body, making sure you're eating healthy. Obviously, sweets can give you that mental fog. Overeating can give you that mental fog. Lack of exercise, sedentary lifestyle. So at the very least, fish oil, exercise, healthy eating. I think you're
Oh, I
good.
love that.
And
Thank
sleeping
you.
well.
So, let's end with kind of diving into more of your journal, because, kind of piggybacking off of ADHD and really finding ways to balance all these different areas in our lives. I know, with high performers, we're really excellent in one area and then we strive, but we might tend to avoid other areas that we are not as confident or, performative in, right? Completely. So I think balance is so beneficial to really kind of
Yeah.
address all the things that we are avoiding so that we are living a full joyful life. So, talk to us about the journal. How do you use it? What are some of the
Yeah.
benefits that you found other people using it, and then where they can find it?
For sure. So as I mentioned, well, I may not have mentioned, but it's called the NJoyno because it's not a journal. It's branded NJoyno, NAL,
Uh-huh.
standing for Nurturing Authentic Living, being able to live your true self. And so it's broken up into the Inspire Joy method. As I mentioned earlier, what Inspire stood for, and it goes through the integrity chapter is first because it's about transforming your thoughts from negative thoughts to positive thoughts, negative emotions to positive emotions, cultivating gratitude, being able to get rid of that ghost of trauma, because you have to get through that first before you get through the next section, which is your physical health and being able to sleep, get that
Mhm.
sleep, focusing on that and eating well and exercise. And of course, focusing then on financial health, aspirational health, and social health. Because I've noticed that I might have been doing good with my physical health, my mental health, but I get in an argument with my husband and everything just goes, all that healthiness goes away because the whole day is just ruined. And I'm just like, okay, that's that social health. What do I need to
Mhm.
do to prevent an argument? Because there's usually a fork in the road with before every argument where I know if I say this, it's going to lead down
Mhm.
here. So how about you close your mouth, that kind of thing. So,
Yeah.
it's going through boundaries and different things like that. But it has therapeutic worksheets, positive affirmations, self-care tips, and it actually ends with Inspire Joy Daily Log, where it's talking you through each thing. Like, okay, what did I do for my finances today? What did I do physically today? What did I do for my mental health today? Yeah, yeah, yeah. So it
Mhm.
goes through all of that, and including, of course, the R&E of Inspire, which is the resilience and empowerment that I mentioned earlier. You can find it on my website at drnjoylife.com.
Mhm.
And it's on Amazon too. Yes, you can get it on Amazon for $39.08, but my website usually has it on sale for like $30, $35. So you can get there and you
Uh-huh.
can get it autographed from me as well.
Yay!
And also my other book is Inspire Joy for the Wife, Mom, Boss: How to Balance It All Without Losing Yourself. And so
Mhm.
that, along with the Enjoyno, is the Joy Bundle.
Oh, the Joy Bundle, I love that. So touch on just a little quickly about the other book. What's that about?
Yeah, so it's kind of it kind of comes out of the Enjoyno where there's a lot of reflection as well, but going through the Inspired Joy as well as, for wife mom bosses or mom bosses, doesn't matter. You are a woman who is spread thin and trying to do everything for everyone at all times. How do you get back to prioritizing yourself, putting yourself on the priority list? And it's part memoir, part practical tips. So a lot of things that I talked about today is in there as far as how that I personally deal with these things and, how can you deal with them as well?
All right, awesome. Well, thank you so much. Thank you, Dr.
You're
Enjoy, for joining us today. I
welcome.
really appreciate it.
Thank
We already know
you.
where to find your books. Talk to us about where we can contact you or where they can find your podcast, LinkedIn, private practice, all those things.
Sure. Yeah. Everything starts with my website. So drnjoylife.com. That's drnjoylife.com. So my podcast is through that website, as well as the books, as well as my private practice. I am licensed in 13 states, not California yet, but my latest one is New York. And I
Oh, yay.
accept Aetna in Georgia, Florida, and Virginia. All the other ones are cash pay, but you can find out the other states at my website if you are looking for medication management. And I also incorporate therapy in anything that I do.
Awesome.
Yeah.
What would you say to somebody who just listened to this entire episode and is like in a space where they want to find joy, but they really just don't know where to begin? They don't have the mental capacity to even do the work to just reach out, even for support. They're just sitting, listening to this podcast and unhappy, can't find joy, and just don't know what to do next.
I went through so many answers as you were
Yeah.
asking that. My first answer was gonna say, "Hey, get the Enjoyable, that's a start." But if you don't feel like doing the work, that Enjoyable is gonna feel like work. Then I was thinking, start with therapy, which I
Mm-hmm.
agree with. Start with therapy. They can help you work through those things. But if someone doesn't even know where to go and start with therapy, get up and take a walk outside. Because a
Mm-hmm.
lot of times we're waiting till we feel like doing something to do
Mm-hmm.
it. You just need to get up and go
Mm-hmm.
outside and do it. And I don't mean do something extravagant. Just take a walk and breathe in the air and take in your senses. And that's a grounding technique, using your five senses. And you can get back to that joy to be able to reset to figure out what to do. But if I had to give you one answer, start with therapy.
I think that's beautifully said. Just get up and go take a walk, go get in some sun. Go outside and go in the sun right now.
Mhm.
And that's
Mhm.
all that's required, because a lot of times we're like, go do this, go do that, do this, and get through the resistance and stuff like that. And it's like, just take your time. Like, the first step,
Mhm.
just get up and go outside, take a walk, and then
Mhm.
allow yourself to move freely,
Mhm.
and build towards the joy that you desire in this lifetime. So
Mhm.
thank you so much
Mhm.
again. Thank you guys so much for listening this week. My name is Bianca Ariel. You're listening to the Recalibrated Vision podcast, where we are releasing, resetting, and recreating our own lives. I want you guys to definitely check out Dr. NJoy's stuff. Definitely check out her podcast. We talked about the difference between joy and happiness. I think that would be a really good one to reference on her podcast. And also go do some work around. We just talked about don't do work, but if you're in the mood, go do some work around. Go look at her podcast and look for an episode around ADHD as well, because I know a lot of the distractions, troubles completing tasks, the organization, the anxiety, all those things definitely would be helpful for us to learn more about, so that we can continue to live this balanced life on our journey from career to calling. So definitely check that out. Thank you guys so much again, and I look forward to seeing you guys next time. Remember to always and forever stay free. Bye.